All right, how's it going, everyone? All right, this is Mr. Leeds. This will be our first video lesson. Okay, so this is 1-1 notes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go over the vocab first. All right, so let's just go over, I think there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vocab words, okay? And then we just kind of talk about how those words interrelate. All right, so let's go ahead and start with a point. Okay, so these first three especially are kind of the building blocks of geometry, right? We can't do anything until we talk about point. Like a point is the first place that we can start at. Okay, it's just a location in space. All right, so this is just a location in any kind of space, right? That could be 2D, that could be 3D, etc. Right? It is a location. All right, it doesn't have area or anything like that. It's just a point, right? I mean, literally looks like this. Okay, it's just a point. All right, so we do need to kind of talk about how we name everything. Okay, and so with the notation is what we're going to call this. Notation is going to be, I'm just going to say, like, point, for example, point A. All right, point A. All right, so this is, again, I'll kind of have like a notation. This is, and what I mean by notation is how do we write a point? All right, well, we write it and we say point A. Okay, so if this was, had the letter A, that would be point A. I'm going to give you 3 examples, right? It's going to seem redundant, but point A, point B, okay, point C, all right? So that's how we can name 3 different points, all right? So it's just a location in space, and that is it for a point, all right? Next, we have a line, okay? A line, okay, is just a line contains points, right? It is a straight line, okay? The funny thing about these first 3 terms is it's very hard to define. We actually call them undefined terms in geometry because they are undefinable, okay? But line, the best we can do is just containing points. Okay, a line, what it is it contains points. Okay, it has contain. I just totally left out like everything else. Okay, but containing points. Okay, so an example. Okay, boom, there's a line. Okay, now we can also name it, right? And don't forget, right, that if you have arrows on the end, okay, it goes on forever in that direction. So in all reality, right, this line is continuing over here. Okay, and on this side, it's continuing over here. But to make it short, we just put those little arrows. Okay, now let's talk about the notation here. How can we write a line? Well, if it contains, let's say, points A and B, okay, if it contains points A and B, okay, within that line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this. That's how we would write it, okay? And I'll go ahead to be consistent, right? In quotations, got line AB, okay? So there is my notation, all right? So I've just got the line, I've got it in quotations, we're good to go, all right? So that's how we would write a line. So if you see this, we are referring to a line, okay? That's a line. Okay, let's go with the third undefinable term, a plane. Okay, so a plane is essentially a flat surface. It containing, let's write the whole word this time, points and lines. Okay, now a plane is literally any flat surface that continues on forever. Okay, an example, I mean literally, like just think about a desk, right? That's one I like to go to for the most. That is a part of a plane. It's a flat surface. Theoretically, a plane continues on in every direction. Okay, like think about this piece of paper. All right, this is a part of a plane. Okay, in all reality, it would continue on in every direction. Okay, but plane's a flat surface. Typically, we're going to write it kind of like this. Okay. So if you see that, right, it's kind of like we're looking at a flat surface in perspective. Okay, we're looking at it kind of in perspective. All right, so it gives us kind of a better view of everything if we draw it into perspective like that. Okay, now it could contain different points. Let's say point A was a point in that plane. Okay, let's say B was a point in that plane. Okay, let's say C was a point in that plane. Okay, now notice, no matter how I draw this, I have kind of like a triangle. Okay, if I can make like a triangle, okay, in that plane, right, and notice that no matter how I connect these, right, C is not on the same line between A and B. Okay, so since these are all on different lines, right, for example, AC, right, that's a line. B is not on that line. Okay, CB, that's a line. A is not on that line. Okay, so no matter how we put it, you can't have all three on the same line at once. Therefore, we can actually name this plane ABC. Okay, and exactly like that. So notation. Okay, I could say plane ABC. All right, now the other thing you might see with planes, okay, is that you have like a little letter in the corner. Okay, so like for example, N. Okay, now N's not a point, but we could also call this plane N. Okay, so if it's in like the corner there, if you see something like that, it's referring to the plane. All right, and actually I'm going to go back and talk about lines real quick too, because you can do something similar here. If you see like a letter, okay, now this is L, okay, you could also call this line L. You can also say that, okay, so if we can also just assign a different letter to it, right? Not only can we use the points, right? These are all points. You can also assign a letter to it. Okay, so that's how we name them. All right, those are all the options about how we name them, and that's just a brief overview of what a point, a line, and a plane is. Okay, so we're going to continue to practice this, especially with lines. Okay, lines are going to be something we're going to be doing the whole year. Okay, so this is super important. Okay, now note I could, if I wanted to, it really doesn't matter what order. Okay, I could also do that. Okay. Just keep that in mind. The order actually doesn't matter. And here too, I could put BAC, I could put CBA, however you want to put it, is perfectly fine. Okay? All right, so that's that. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the other ones. These will be a little bit quicker. Collinear, okay, is on the same line. That's the definition. Really, we don't need the quotations, okay? That is the definition. Collinear means on the same line. Now, think about coworker. Okay, co-worker works on the same team, collinear on the same line. Okay, we will look at examples of that later. Okay, collinear on the same line. Okay, so 2 points when they're on the same line. Coplanar. Okay, well, look, collinear, coplanar. Okay, what do you think this is? Okay, that is on the same plane. Okay, and then one more term, and that is just an intersection. Okay, and by the technical definition, it's when you have two or more geometric figures I didn't set this up right. Okay, the intersection is the set of all points when there's two or more geometric figures, and they have all the two or more geometric figures, and they contain the same set of points. Okay, now we will also see another definition on our notes page, but guys, don't overthink it, right? An intersection is when they have, you've got a line and a line, right? That's your intersection, okay? You could also have it with a plane, though, okay? So, like, for example, if you've got a line, okay, here's a point, and now I'm going to do a little trick here. Okay, that when we have like that, that's behind the plane. Okay, so this would actually be the intersection. Okay, so that's the intersection, that point between the plane and the line. Okay, and then also over here. Okay, all right. So that's the intersections. Let's go ahead and look at some examples. All right, what we're essentially doing is we're going to use this sheet. Okay. And we are going to have, we're going to use these definitions, and then we're going to look at this, okay? All right, I'm just going to try to do about one example through each little section here, but I'll also post a page that has all the examples done so you can look at them, okay? But here we go. Name a line that contains point A, all right? Very, very simple, okay? We're looking at point A, right? That's, we just want to name something that contains point A, okay? So we want to look at point A. Here's point A. Okay, now multiple different ways to do this. We could, here's the line, right? Here's the line, okay? We could name it line L. Okay, we could name it line, well, look, we've got two different points on that line. Okay, I can name it AB, or I can name it AC. There's a lot of different examples here. I'm going to go ahead and just say line AC. Now what I can't do is I can't use that P. Well, because that P is referring to the plane. Remember, when it's in the corner, it's in the plane. Okay, or it's referring to the plane. All right, so, and there's way more. Okay, so that's one. All right, this is all how we interrelate with things. I guess let's do one more. So name a point. Right, we're naming a point not on AC. So we got to identify what AC is. Well, AC, here's A, here's C. So AC. Notice my little symbol, okay? That's the line symbol. I know it's a little bit hard to see here. That is referring to this line right here. Okay, so a point not on AC. Well, we've got a few, okay? D is not on this line, okay? E is not on this line. So either one, okay, we'll go with point E or D, okay? Now we're going to draw a figure for each relationship. So again, we're just looking at how these words interact, all right? Let's go ahead and try the one that has collinear. Okay, so point X is collinear, right? And we want to know that that's on the same line. Okay, with A and P. Okay, so in other words, point X is on the same line as A and P. Okay, so that's what we're drawing a picture of. So let's go ahead and do it over here. Okay, well I've got P here. Okay, I've got A here. Well, if I want to make a line between those, we just got to draw a line. Okay, PA. All right. Point X, got to be collinear. Okay, it's got to be on the same line. Well, it could be here, anywhere. As long as it's on the same line. It could be even over here. Okay, even though I wouldn't do that. Let's make it very clear. Okay, so let's go ahead and put X here. But again, it does not matter where it is, as long as it is collinear. Okay, it is on the same line. All right. Let's go ahead and do 9. Okay, point Y is not collinear with T and P. Okay, so let's make T and P a line. Okay, and then Y, it just is not on the line. So you can just put Y over here. Okay, so it's separate from that line. Okay, so it's all interrelated. Okay, so we're using different words for different points, different lines, different planes, and we're kind of seeing how they all interact. Okay, let's go to this next page. Kind of dealing with more planes here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do it. All right, intersection. Okay, it's the combined points. All right, so name the intersection of plane N. Okay, now we're dealing with some planes, like I said, and line AE. All right, so name the intersection of plane N and line AE. All right, here we go. So I've got a plane. Okay, plane N. All right, notice it's one letter. Okay, could I name it plane B, C, D? Sure, because all three of those points are on that plane. All right, name the intersection of line E. All right, here we go. AE. So here's A, here's E. That's my line. Okay, now note it's got those little dash marks. Remember, that means it goes under. So what we're kind of picture like this is like a pencil, and you're like jamming your pencil through the piece of paper. Okay, so it goes straight, that line like pierces that piece of paper. Okay, so they intersect actually right here. Okay, so my intersection is just point B. Okay, they intersect at that point. All right, and let's see here. This is a great question to think about. Okay, does DC intersect AE? Explain. All right, so DC, here it is. Okay, here's DC. All right, and here's AE. Okay, do they intersect? Well, certainly look like they do right here. Right, but you got to remember that we're working in 3D space here. Okay, it's a little bit hard to see, but right, you've got to remember that this line, it's like it pierces that piece of paper. Okay, it comes through like this, right? You've got like a plane, okay, and you got your pencil and it's just going through it, right? So you got to think in 3D, okay? So no, they do not intersect here because it's behind that line. So they actually don't intersect. I'll go ahead and say something like because point B is behind line CD. Okay. Lots of explanations for that, but something like that is good. Okay. Cool. Okay, next one. Name 3 line segments that intersect point A. All right. So we're naming some line segments. Let's see. Let me look through these. Okay. Let's go ahead and do number 5. This is a good one. All right. So name the line of intersections between planes GAB and FEH. All right, so let's go ahead and identify what plane that is. We've got to find those 3 points. Notice it's not just one letter like it was up here. Okay, it's 3, which means I've got to look at my points. So here's G, okay, here's A, here's B. So it's this top flat surface. Okay, I'm going to kind of lightly shade it in. Okay, so it's that plane, it's that flat surface on top. Okay, that's my plane. All right, and then FEH. Okay, well, here's F. Here's E, here's H. Okay, so it's this plane. Okay, so let's think about the intersection. Okay, now in the past we've worked with just points for intersections, but intersections can also be lines. Remember, the intersection is the set of all the points. Okay, so it turns out, right, we got to think about what these 2 things have in common. Well, I've got this front face, okay, and I've got this face right here. Even when I kind of outline it, it becomes a little bit more obvious. They both contain GH. Okay, so it's GH is my intersection. Okay, and we could also think about this one. Okay, do they intersect? Well, let's just quickly look. GFE. Okay, that's that front one again, and then HBC. So yeah, those 2 do intersect. They intersect right here. Okay. All right, that is it for this lesson.